Welcome back. In a world divided by wars, military, and trade, India remains a rare neutral force, maintaining equidistance and friendly ties with all. Now, as tension rises between the United States and Europe, the European Union is turning to India for deeper engagement. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, accompanied by 27 EU commissioners, are in India for a two-day visit. A delegation-level meeting was underway with the Prime Minister, as you see in these visuals, at the Hyderabad House in New Delhi. A joint statement is expected anytime as we speak. Now, this meeting also becomes significant as it comes at a time when the United States is preparing to impose reciprocal tariffs on EU goods, which is of tune of 25%. Out of the meeting, Ursula von der Leyen, while speaking in New Delhi, said that the ties between India and the EU are beyond diplomacy and are bound by culture. She also added that EU and India have the potential to being one of the defining partnerships of the century. The EU chief also announced that a free trade agreement between EU and India would be the largest deal of its kind anywhere in the world, and both sides are looking at firming it up by the end of this year. India-EU trade had reached nearly $200 billion in 2024, with investments exceeding $120 billion. As New Delhi pushes for stronger Indo-Pacific security cooperation and the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor, Brussels sees India as a key economic and geopolitical partner. Ursula von der Leyen has even called India one of the EU's most trusted friends, emphasizing Europe's commitment to openness, partnership, and outreach. Talks are expected to be centering around the stalled free trade agreement and the EU-India Trade and Technology Council. Let me go across to my guests. So joining me at this point, we have Achal Malhotra, former diplomat, and also Pathikrit Payne, preeminent geopolitical analyst. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me at this point. Ambassador Malhotra, let me begin with you. We expect the joint statement to happen anytime soon. What, in your understanding, is the focus of the statement and the focus of the talks between Prime Minister Modi and Ursula von der Leyen expected to focus around?
Well, let me begin by saying that, India's relations with the European Union go back to many, many years. And from 2004 onwards, we are having a strategic partnership. In 2020 summit, there was a roadmap drawn for the period up to 2025. Unfortunately, the pace at which the relations between India and EU should have moved, is not visible. So today the geopolitical scenario is slightly different. Everybody is trying to link it with the possible, drifting away between the United States of America and European Union. Therefore, the newly formed love for India. This is one dimension. But I think, be whatever it may be, whatever is the background, we can hope for a new phase in the bilateral relations. There are many issues on which we have not been able to, come to agreement. The good thing is that both are, India and European Union are democracies. We believe in the union of diversities. There are issues on rule of law and human rights. There's all consensus. But when we talk the nitty-gritties, the specific issues like trade and investment, there have been many, many issues which have not, we have not been able to come to a mutual agreement. And these include tariffs, these include market access, these include mobility and migration. Yes. And, similarly, many issues like the European Union wanting to put higher tariffs on the so-called high carbon products, and market access they want, for their agricultural products is an area of concern for us. And investment protection also, they have their views on the intellectual property right and all that. But good thing is that there is a realization that the relationship must be, a push, a momentum, a new momentum must be given. And the long-awaited, free trade agreement and investment protection agreement are put into place. And similarly important from our point of view is also the migration and mobility agreement, because we want an easier access to European Union for our educated and talented people. So I think we can look forward to. There are many new areas like, not exactly 100% new, but areas like artificial intelligence. I don't know whether
Yeah.
it's quite clear that uh, the UK and the USA have a different approach to the artificial intelligence as from India. This was evident at the Paris summit. They decided not to sign the declaration because they don't want regulatory mechanisms. They don't want artificial intelligence to be regulated to the extent we want to look at it differently, inclusivity and transparency and responsibility and accountability, all those factors. I don't know how many of European Union countries would be having the similar opinion. So issues are complicated,
Fair
but the
enough.
desire to take the relationship further is important. Saying that we are the second, the third largest
Okay.
trading partner is not enough, because in the total European Union's trade, our share is insignificant. So the journey is long, but
Okay, so let's talk about
if
then
it
this
becomes
desire which has been expressed on behalf of the European Union. And let me go across to Pathikrit Payne on that. Pathikrit, do you see an intensified desire for proximity, or at least a consideration coming in from the European Union side? Because 2 years ago, when India had not really bowed down or not really gone along with the European Union stand on the Russia-Ukraine war, there was a bit of frostiness which was coming to us from Brussels and other parts of Europe here. Now that the European Union finds itself isolated, who would have thought, with the United States under Trump getting increasingly closer to Vladimir Putin, and therefore reaffirming the need for India's stance of having been neutral, does this now put EU on a sticky wicket when it comes to necessitating more deeper and closer ties with New Delhi?
Ritangshu, first and foremost, we should look at this relationship from the prism of what India's External Affairs Minister stated in June 2022 in a summit in Bratislava, which is the capital of Slovakia, where he stated that Europe must grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problem. And that has been a fundamental problem for Europe, where it still believes, like their colonial past, that they know the best what is good for the world. So if you look at this relationship, yes, it is a strategic relationship, there's a strategic partnership, yes, there is trade, but if you look at the number of resolutions they have tried to pass against India in the last few years, the way they tried to corner India in the false pretext, I would say, on human rights issues. They would want India to move Armed Forces Special Powers Act away from Manipur and Kashmir. They want us to do away with UAPA. Yes. They want the FCRA restrictions to go on for foreign NGOs. They'll do, and they have a real problem with India's nationalism. They question our democracy. And look at European Union's own stand in case of Romania, where the opposition leader Colin Georgescu, since he was winning, that entire election was annulled, and there are criminal charges now being put on him. So European Union has double standard on every aspect. You see this reconciliation or conciliatory approach, I look at it purely from the prism of opportunism. Yes, we do have good relations. Thousands of European companies do operate in India. But if you ask me, at a bilateral level, India has very good relation with individual European Union members. But a European Union as a whole and the head of European Union, I think there's a fundamental problem we have with them. Right now, they are setting up the largest NATO base in Romania. And there is a desperation. They don't want the conflict to end. If you look at the largest number of NGOs doing anti-India work, most of them are based in Europe. If you look at the indexes which deliberately pin us down, which in spite of the fact that we have been one of the most successful country in combating COVID, look at the kind of standard statements that come from out of them. Yes, there's a desperation. But please understand, I don't think they have understood, realized there's no reconciliation as such. There's a desperate attempt, because you have a problem with United States they're facing today. The Chinese do not allow the European companies to enter. The Chinese have this, the dumping strategy. They're overwhelming the European market. So they're desperate right now to look for newer markets. That's all fine. But please start respecting India for what it is. That is what they don't do. That is what they don't want to do. And that is where the problem is. I reiterate, look at this relationship. There are positives, as Ambassador Sir mentioned. Look at it from the prism of what External Affairs Minister stated in 2022. Europe has still not grown out of the mindset that the world's problems are the Europe's problems as well. They have a problem with this mindset. And I don't think today the mindset has changed. Ursula von der Leyen, with all due respect, is one of the most hated person in Europe today. One of the most, the crisis in Europe today, energy crisis, security crisis, immigration crisis, economic crisis, is because of European Union head and Brussels. And that is something they must realize and stop interfering in other countries' affairs that they have kept on doing for a long period of time, even when they have very little leverage. Back to you.
Well, as we speak, we are getting live visuals from the Hyderabad House where we expect the joint statement to come out shortly. While we wait for that, Ambassador Malhotra, the big talk in the lead up, and in fact, the big buzzword in all bilateral and international relations these days is tariffs here. Now, in the run up here, there were two important developments. One is, of course, Donald Trump himself levying a tariff of 25% on the European Union, further throttling trade. And the European Union also talking of echoing what Trump has done by imposing reciprocal tariffs on India, which would impact specifically two sectors: cars, automobiles and wine. And especially in automobiles, I think India relies a lot more on European products than American products to begin with at this point. How do you expect this to play out at this point? Do you worry that there will be more countries or more regions which will follow Donald Trump's lead of reciprocal tariffs in order to try and safeguard their own markets?
Well, I think first of all, whether it is United States of America or whether it is the European Union, they must realize that the World Organization, the WTO, does provide for differential tariffs between the developed and developing countries. So, but unfortunately, all the global order is in disarray. Nobody is listening. United Nations is paralyzed, and everybody's might is right kind of a situation. But this tariff war ultimately will not augur well for nobody. I mean, just for generating revenue, it's fine, but ultimate impact will be on the society. I mean, the importing country will have to pay more. The consumers will have to pay more. So where will it stop? Where is it going to stop? And there are areas, as far as India is concerned, agriculture, dairy products. I can assure you, we are not going to take any such decision which would allow market access to highly or heavily subsidized European Union agricultural products into our country and jeopardize the interest of our own agricultural workers and farmers. So these are very, as I said, these are the issues. This is the reason why there has not been any positive movement in free trade area for last so many years. And even on the issue of mobility, migration. So unless now the test is under the changed circumstances, the geopolitical scenario where the European Union is looking for partners elsewhere, and they think India, and rightly think that India is the best partner in Asia, in particular, and globally also. So, but where are they? How much are they willing to take into account our being sensitive to our sensitivities and make compromises and climb down? That is what is going to play an important role. And of course, with leaders like Donald Trump in power, the multilateralism is at stake, globalization is at stake, and these are the trends. I don't know whether anything can be done about it. But as I say, there are many issues. There are important and serious issues on which the more it's the European Union which will have to work more to climb down so that we can make further and positive movement. Over to you.
All right, Pathikrit Payne, I'll come to you for the last word because I think there's some disturbing news coming in and we'll have to quickly reflect that. You have mentioned at this point, and you made it very clear that right now India goes into this bilateral meeting from a position of strength, given the fact that European Union, especially the leader Ursula von der Leyen, is facing immense backlash from constituent members of the European Union, from traditional allies like the United States, as well as enemies and foes like Russia and China. What should be India what should be India's pound of flesh which it would look to get from this summit in order to put itself on a higher standing?
Ritangshu, first and foremost, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor has lot of prospect, immense prospect. Europe is a strong strategic trade partner, and as I stated, bilaterally with individual European countries, we have very good relation, and that will continue. But we will not give up on our commitment to Russia. We will not do away with our stand on the issue of Russia-Ukraine war. We are not going to stop, importing oil from Russia. And certainly, just because there are problems European Union today is facing with United States doesn't mean that we will give a red carpet to them and open our economy. So we will say yes.
I'm really sorry, Pathikrit Payne and Ambassador Malhotra. We'll have to interrupt you at this point. We'll have to move on because we've got a disturbing piece of news coming in from Uttarakhand. Thank you both for joining me, gentlemen.